So welcome to this easy Linux box. It's probably one of the easiest ones, and there's actually two ways sort of you can do this. But let's just start off. So first of all, we see an FTP server. So of course we're going to try to FTP into it. So if you just use your anonymous credentials, you will see that you actually can't log in. So we really can't use this. So that leaves us just with SSH and the website, because this one is closed. Now, SSH is most of the time there, so you can just, log into the box when you found, for example, some credentials, or you want a more persistent way to get onto the system and also be able to connect back. But for now, we're just going to look at the website. So first of all, before we do anything, you have to make sure, I added it to my host file. How you do it is if you go to your host file, you have to change it. So it maps this IP address to this domain name, basically. So we can visit Blocky detector box, and we left off with this, Minecraft looking picture. If I scroll, I can see some welcome to Blockycraft. I see login, which is WordPress. That's good to know. It's a WordPress site, proudly powered by WordPress. So that just kind of gave it away as well. But for the rest, I don't really see anything. So I see some archive, which just contains the same thing, and an uncategorized thing, which also is empty. So right off the bat, we don't really see anything special here. So what we're going to do, we're just going to run this fuzz scan. And what it's doing, it's just going to do a directory brute force right after the domain. So if we run this, we can immediately see a wiki, a WP content. So you can just look into these things. So if we look into the wiki, what do we find here? Oh, that's my bad. What you have to do is specify the protocol as well. So what do we find if we go to the wiki? We find that it's under construction. Please check back later. Okay, so probably nothing here. So we just continue to look through things. Yeah, we saw WP content, but plugins might be interesting as well. Also community JavaScript, PHP my admin, so we know it's going to be PHP. Also because it uses WordPress, it's almost always going to be PHP my admin as a background, right? So let's just go through, sort of follow the list. So then we had WP content. In here, I don't see much, but you can try to sort of brute force your way through this. So you can figure out what kind of plugins are being used, and maybe one consists of a vulnerability, which you can actually exploit. The other one is going to be plugins. And here we actually find two files. If you download these things, what you end up, I'm just going to stop this because this is basically going to be the way, you will be left off with this one. So the grief prevention, if you look it up, this is actually already existing. So if we just look grief prevention, what's the name again? Oh, I should not see that. I'm just going to put in a name here, copy it. If we look up this, it's actually an existing thing. So it's not likely that this is going to contain some credentials or even like something that we can work on. But if I just want to see blocky.core.jar and you don't see something like a GitHub, we see hack the box right up, it's probably going to be something to do with this box, as there's going to be matches based on this. So people search for this, right? So what we're going to do, we have to actually use a Java decompiler. I tried using GDGUI by downloading the deb, but it didn't work. So instead, I'm not really good with installing tools, but if I use GDGUI, it just asks me, do you want to install this tool? I said yes, and it actually magically works. So that's cool, right? I can just use that. So if we go to home, let's see where my file is. It's going to be inside of boxes and Blocky core. So if we open this, we end up with a sort of decompiled version of the jar file. So we see a manifest.mf. This is basically, I think it's in every file. I'm not sure like how Java works, but it's here. And then we have blockycore.class, and this is like pretty cool. So to get username, welcome back to Blockycraft. So I think this is just something which you see when you join the game, for example. And then we have the SQL pass here as well. So I'm just going to take note of this thing, right? So copy it. And then I'm just going to open up like a notepad, doesn't really matter. And we see root with this password. Just because you don't know when you're going to have this in need for, right now it's going to be the first thing we will need. But sometimes you actually don't immediately have to use it, but it might be a password you use somewhere later in the box. So now that we know it, we can actually sort of try to look like, how can we use this? We know there's a PHP admin, so why don't we just try it here? So if we just fill in the password and use go, we can actually get onto the backend. And this is a standard one, this one is standard, this one is standard. I believe this one isn't. It's also standard with PHP myadmin, and sys is also standard. So the only thing which would be interesting for us is WordPress. So there my voice goes. And we can see WP users, which is probably the most interesting one because we're looking for some password reuse. So if we go into the index, we can see what kind of information is being like needed for these files. And if you want to see who's in there, we can actually click WP users. You will only see the first one, as I tried to just add myself when going to SQL insert. So I just added something, but you will only see this one. And we see a user pass. I tried to look it up. It's not an MD5 hash, but it's some WordPress hashing. So I'm not sure like which algorithm it's using, because there's going to be a phpMyAdmin hashing algorithm online, which you can try, but it doesn't work. So I'm just going to assume this is the same password, and we see a user login of Notch. Then we can actually just try this, which is pretty cool. So we can just do Notch at 10.10.37, and we can just paste in the password. I didn't have the password anymore. Just copy it. Oh. Like this. Paste in the password, and you are the user itself, which is pretty cool. So now you want to look for privilege escalation, but before we do that, I want to show you how you could also have guessed this. So if we were on the box, and we would actually go through the PHP or like the site itself, it would say, if you go to, for example, this post by Notch. Wait, what? It should say by Notch. I thought I said it here. Oh yeah, here, by Notch. And you could have guessed that this was the username, but I really dislike this method, and this is also the method that was being used by HackTheBox, but I don't like it. I just prefer it if you can actually, for example, see the users in the database, because then you have more certainty that it's at least a valid user. Well, anyway, when you're on the box, the first thing I always used is sudo l, so you can see what kind of privileges you have. In this case, it's all, meaning we can basically do anything. So we can do sudo I for interactive, and you are root. It's that easy. So we can just do root.root.txt. This was probably the easiest box on HackTheBox itself. But of course, there's also going to be, what's the first one? Beep, I think it was, or the one before that. That's also going to be easy. But this is basically how you can do this box. So yeah.